Well, for more insight into the higher education system in China, I'm joined by Dan Yi, the co-founder and CEO of College Node, an online platform that helps foreign students learn how to navigate the US college admission system. Welcome to the show.
How are you, Rachelle?
Good, thank you. Now, let's start with some of these differences. Obviously, we saw this huge gap in terms of affordability when it comes to higher education in China. Tell us about some of the programs or the funding that make it more affordable there.
In the United States or in China?
In China. Let's start with China.
Well, there are a lot of government scholarships for students, especially if you are low-income students. There are multiple forms of scholarships that are available to you, and also depending on the city you're in. So these are from the central level and from the provincial level scholarships that are available to help students. So if you are from a fairly poor family, you can actually attend school in China for very low cost.
And that is helpful. And speaking about these costs, we're seeing that some people are choosing to study outside of China, whether it's for financial reasons or whether it's because they didn't do so well on the Gaokao, whatever the case may be. So where do most students tend to go in terms of the countries and the areas of study?
So the United States is still the overwhelming favorite in terms of where students headed to. And other English-speaking countries such as Australia and Canada are also very popular. But now we're seeing increasing amount of students going to places such as Germany, where the schools are relatively more affordable.
Now, what about the transition? I know that that's something that your company helps with. In terms of some of the challenges of Chinese students trying to make it overseas, away from home, away from friends and family, what are some of their biggest challenges?
Well, the language is by far, I would say, the biggest challenge. Now, you have to imagine you are going to a foreign country. You're attending their higher education institution in a language that's not your mother tongue. So many of the Chinese students, while they're good at reading and writing English, their comprehending, listening, and speaking skill is not very strong. So we're seeing that increasing amount of American universities create these bridge programs that allow Chinese students to enter for a semester to learn about American culture, American language, before entering into the academic curriculum. And this bridge program has been very successful in terms of preparing the Chinese student to integrate into American society.
What do you think are some of the misperceptions that Chinese students have when they're first trying to study abroad?
Well, from many of the students I've talked to, they think it will be very comfortable to study in the United States. They have no idea the level of academic rigor that they're entering into. So very common you see that during the first semester, the students have a culture shock, both from the American culture and the academic culture. And they very quickly discovered that American university is not a piece of cake. They have to study constantly in order to get good grades. And I see many of the students make this transition in the first year. Therefore, first year college is actually very difficult for many Chinese students.
Right. Now, in terms of some of the things that foreign universities are doing to lure Chinese students, because they are definitely making efforts in that regard, what are you seeing and what's working?
So several things that they're doing. The wealthier universities are beginning to offer more scholarships to Chinese students, especially low-income Chinese students. So for schools such as Yale and Harvard, if your parents make under a certain amount of money, the tuition and the room and board are basically waived. However, these are still very much limited to a very elite group of universities, whereas other schools such as University of Rochester and Case Western are also beginning to give out an increasing amount of scholarships, but it does not cover the whole cost of the tuition.
Now, something else that we're seeing is also foreign universities setting up campuses, local campuses in China. Is that a better way, you think, to bring students in? Because they are still, a lot of them still charging those Western prices.
Yeah, so there's a lot of debate on the decision to go to a Shanghai campus of NYU, for example, because you're spending all this money. You want to come to the United States to experience the culture, not to stay in China, because for all that money, you could have done a lot more things at Fudan University. So what you see is that for majority of the Chinese students, their first preference is still the main campus in the United States. They do not want to go to a satellite campus. They do not want to stay in China.
Now, what about the job prospects? Obviously, people are worried about taking the gaokao. They're worried about kind of getting to the next step. What about the job prospects for Chinese students? Do they tend to return to China, or do they tend to set up shop perhaps in their destination countries? What sort of trends are you seeing?
So we're seeing a split for the Chinese students studying in the United States. Now, when they go back to China, their American degree tend to bring a premium on the job market. So employers tend to pay extra for students that are educated in the United States. Whereas in the United States, there's a lot of demand for engineers, and Chinese students overwhelmingly are more willing to study engineering jobs. So you're seeing that many of the engineering students were able to successfully find jobs in large companies like Google and Facebook, and those are the ones that end up deciding to stay. Whereas another large part of the Chinese student, especially those that study finance or economics, tend to return China and find very good jobs as well.
Now, speaking of future prospects, we do have a bit of a pop quiz for you, a bit of a gaokao pop quiz that we've prepared.
Oh no.
It's nothing too terrible, no pressure.
Okay.
So here, and you can also make sure that you can play along at home. So we have the questions for you here. So the first one that we actually have is a grammar question.
Okay.
So you're just going to fill in the blank. So blank ourselves from the physical and mental tension. We each need deep thought and inner quietness. Your options are having freed, B, freed, C, too free, or D, freeing.
I would say both A and D will work, but I will go with A.
Okay. Well, the answer that we have, actually, we're going to give the answers at the end. We're not going to give it away just yet.
Okay.
Now, the second question, a little bit trickier. It's a math question. So if x plus y is greater than or equal to a, and x minus y is less than or equal to minus 1, and the minimum value of z equals x plus ay is 7, what does a equal?
Oh my God. I grew up here, so I have no idea. I would take a stab in the dark and say A, but I have no idea.
Not a problem. The answer is actually B in that situation, but obviously most people who take the gaokao don't have millions of people watching them, and they're not put on the spot. We appreciate you playing along with us.
I'm so glad I don't have to go through gaokao now.
Well, thank you for being such a good sport. Dan Yi, co-founder and CEO of College Node.
If you like what you just saw, follow us on social media and visit our website, cctv-america.com.